If this is I have no idea what I'm talking about right now. Like, I literally don't even know what that was that came out of my mouth. Duster. Hello book lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steph, and in today's video we will be doing my December wrap-up. If this is the first wrap-up of mine that you are watching and you want to watch any of my previous month's wrap-ups, I will leave the entire playlist of all of my wrap-ups linked down below in the description. As always, I will start with the book that I liked the least, so the worst book that I read in the month, and then I will move on to my favorite book that I read in the month. This is just the way that I like to do my wrap-ups. I was able to read 26 books in the month of December, which I am very happy with. I really was like starting to lose steam near the end of the month. Usually near the end of the year, I am just like really burnt out from my reading year, so I do take it a little bit more slowly. So a lot of these books are like very short novellas that I just added to the end of the month. A lot of these books are like quite short. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump right on into December's wrap-up, starting with the worst book that I read in the month of December, and that was The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. If I did a most disappointing reads of 2024, this book would definitely have taken the top spot. This was one of my most anticipated releases. I have read from Matt Haig previously and really enjoyed the books that I have read from him, and this was just such a disappointment. It was not at all what I was expecting, and I knew going in that there were a little bit of like magical realism elements, but I didn't know that I signed up for what I actually got with this book. So in a nutshell, this story is essentially following our main character, Grace. Grace is a retired math teacher. She's also a widow, and she is just living a very simple life, kind of just doing her own thing, minding her own business. And then one day she gets word that an old friend has passed away and actually left her a house in the Spanish islands of Ibiza. And the circumstances behind her friend's death are just like not adding up to her. There just seems to be something off with the way that her friend has just left her this house and has suddenly passed away. Like I said, I did know that there was magical realism in this book going in, but I just did not realize how heavy those themes would be. I also didn't know that I was signing up for bigger entities in this book and essentially like alien type of things. The ending got super strange, and the purpose of this book was just super uninteresting to me, so I really just didn't have a good time with this one, and I ended up giving this book a 1.5 stars out of 5. Then I read Owned by a Hitman by Alexis Abbott. I will not really talk too much about this book because I did read this for the latest episode of Tackle My TBR that is out already, so I will leave that linked down below in the description if you want my full in-depth thoughts. This is a dark romance, and we are following two characters. The male main character is part of the mafia and basically tells our female main character that he is going to protect her, but the stipulation behind that is that he will own her for a year. This book started off pretty strong, but then really lost steam, and I just did not care about it at all. I thought the ending was so ridiculous, and it was one of the like dumbest things I have ever read, and I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was another like super disappointing read because I did have very high hopes for this one, and that is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I did decide to pick this up because I was going to do like a Goodreads vlog style video where I read the top 10 like horror books in the Goodreads Choice Awards category. I did end up scrapping that video because after reading this book, I just really lost steam. I had read most of those books anyways. I think the only one that I did not read yet is the Stephen King that is on the list, but I will be hopefully getting to that soon. But regardless, we are talking about this book. So this is an adult horror where we are essentially reading from the perspective of a serial killer. It is a like slasher horror. We are reading from the perspective of Tully Driver, and it reads as if he has written his own like autobiography. You are reading all of the events that took place in which there were like these mass murders that happened back in the day, and then we are reading from his perspective of present day as he is like recounting exactly what happened in, I believe it's 1989. I feel like Stephen Graham Jones is one of these authors where I read one of his books, which was The Only Good Indians, and I absolutely loved it, and ever since then everything that I have read by him has kind of been a disappointment. So I just keep giving him chances, but I don't know if I just need to kind of take a break from his books because truly just like have not worked for me lately. This book I just found to be like so slow moving and so boring, and the biggest problem that I had with this book was actually the writing style. I really did not like the way that the book flowed, and this writing style just made the story move so slowly. I started this physically. I even started to annotate. I don't know if you can see my annotations, but I had to quickly move to the audiobook because I really just was not able to get into the story and it was taking me forever to read this. So I did end up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars as well. The next book I have is another horror that unfortunately just did not work for me, and that is Where I End by Sophie White. This book was just so difficult to get into the writing style again. It was just really not for me. I can completely understand why people absolutely love this book. This type of horror I don't usually mind, but when you put this type of writing style mixed in, it really just like throws me out of the story. And again, I just could not get into it. I thought that this was just very slow moving and a little bit repetitive, if I am being honest. So in this, we are following 3 generations of women. So we are following a daughter, a mother, and then her grandmother. And the daughter and grandmother have to take care of the daughter's mother. They also live on this very cursed island, and there are a lot of things that are happening on this island. Again, this just was not for me. It was a super short read, and again, took me so long to physically read it. I was just not really having a good time with this one, so I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars as well. Then I read Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. This I put on my TBR because I wanted to add some like Christmas books to my December TBR, and let me tell you that this gave very little to no Christmas vibes at all. So a fair warning, if you are looking for a Christmas book and you decide to look at this beautiful cover and say this is a Christmas book, I would think twice, because I'm gonna say that this really did not give me any type of Christmas vibes. So this essentially, we are following our 2 main characters. The female main character is named Melody and the male main character is named Beat, and this is like a rock and roll music story. So that is number one thing that just really irked me about this story, is that our main characters are named Melody and Beat. I'm not really sure why Tessa Bailey decided to go in that direction, but again, that is besides the point. We are following Melody and Beat. They essentially set out on this journey where they have to reunite their mother's rock band. So both of their parents were in this rock band that no longer exists, but there is somebody that is trying to get the rock band back together. So it is their mission to essentially try to convince their parents to perform one more show. The first problem that I had with this book is that right at the beginning of the book, we do learn why our male main character Beat is deciding to take on this task. I just personally thought that that whole reasoning just did not make sense. It does get explained at the end of the book, but I personally just could not get behind any of that, and it just wasn't believable. And while you are reading it, you know that there is so much more that is going on, but that part was just not enjoyable for me. It really just added nothing to the story, and the stakes were just like very low in my opinion, just because like you knew there was something else going on, and I just could not feel the chemistry between both of our main characters. I actually just did not like our main characters at all. So once that happens, I am just completely taken out of the romance. I didn't think that they had chemistry. Again, I signed up for like a cute Christmas romance and I did not get that, and the plot of this book is just not something that is interesting to me. I think if you go into this book with 0 expectations of like the Christmas season, and you also enjoy reading about like music in your books and rock bands specifically, this may work for you. I feel like I was just lied to by this cover, and I ended up giving this one a 2.25 stars out of 5. Then very quickly, I am going to talk about 5 novellas that I read, and I'm going to do it all right now because I'm not going to give you like each individual synopsis for these. I'm just going to talk about it now because the worst one that I read is going to fall into this rating category. So the novellas that I am talking about are the Under the Mistletoe collection. You guys may have seen them on Prime Reading. I believe that they are like the Amazon Prime original stories. So I did read all 5. Again, I'm not going to give you the synopsis, but yeah, just know that these are all very short Christmas romance novellas. So if you are looking for something that has the like Christmas vibes and also that you can read in one sitting, then you can definitely pick these up. So the worst one that I read was actually the one that's also by Tessa Bailey, and that is Merry Ever After. I ended up giving this one a 2.25 stars. Then I read All by My Elf by Olivia Dade, and I gave this one a 2.5 stars. Merriment and Mayhem by Alexandria Bellafour, and I gave this a 3 stars. Then I read Only Santa's in the Building by Alexis Daria, and this one I gave a 3.25 stars. And finally, the best one in the collection. So if you are going to pick one to read, I would definitely recommend picking this one. And that is Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. And I did end up giving this one a 3.5 stars. So yeah, in my opinion, these are nothing groundbreaking, but they were really good to read in and around Christmas time. I had a very good time reading all of them. Again, very short and you can read them in all one sitting. I don't want to harp too much on these books. I gave you my ratings, so take that how you will. And if you are just going to pick one, know that I do recommend the Ali Hazelwood. Then very quickly, another book that I did read for Tackle My TBR. So if you want my full in-depth thoughts, please go and watch that episode. And that is going to be Shipwrecked by Olivia Dade. This is again an adult romance. We are following our two main characters who did previously have a one-night stand, and then they are forced to work on this show together. And the story does span over 6 years. And yeah, if you do want my full thoughts, you can go and check out that episode, but I did end up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. Then I read Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. This is also another like really short story. Again, you could read this in one sitting. So this is a horror novel where we are following 5 characters. These 5 characters do find themselves at this graveyard, and while there is a very mysterious hole that has been dug by somebody, and they are basically trying to figure out the mystery behind this very mysterious hole and all of these very weird and strange things that are happening. Again, this is a very short book, one that you can read in one sitting. If you are looking for like very creepy, like eerie gothic vibes, I would recommend this book. I don't think that it was necessarily for me. I found the story to be a little bit like slow moving and also confusing on audio. I would have liked to physically read this book. There were some like really like eerie and creepy scenes and descriptions in this book as well. So if you are looking for that, I would say to maybe give this a chance. For me, I just did not vibe with the story. I thought that it was just a little bit too slow, and I felt like the reveal at the end was just like a little bit lackluster. But yeah, it was just a very like average read, and I did end up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. The next book I have to talk about is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is the story of Achilles and Patroclus. So Achilles basically meets Patroclus after he has been exiled from his homeland following this very violent act that takes place, and the two of them do meet by chance, then form a friendship, and eventually do have to go and help a character named Helen who has been kidnapped. There was absolutely nothing wrong with this book. I knew going in that this book just would not be for me. I knew that the writing style and the like subject matter in this book is not something that I specifically like to read about. I am not like huge into Greek mythology, but also Madeline Miller, her writing style, it's just very like lyrical and it's just very descriptive, and that is just something that like bogs down my reading experience. I did end up listening to the audiobook for this, and the story was actually very much engaging. I know that this is like a me issue and not the book's issue, and I knew that going in. Nothing wrong with this book. I would still recommend this specifically if you do like Madeline Miller's writing and Greek mythology, but this was just a very average read for me specifically, and I did end up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Avant-Guards by Carly Usden. This is a graphic novel series. In this, we are following our main character, Charlie, who transfers to a new college. She is just trying to like find her crowd, find her interests, and she does end up joining the basketball team, where she does meet a bunch of characters. While there's really nothing more to this story. There is a little bit of a romance that starts to develop. There is some LGBT in here. There are some really good themes in here. There is nothing wrong with this graphic novel. I thought that it was just a very average read, and I did end up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars as well. The next book I have to talk about is Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers. This is a contemporary fiction novel. We are following the lives of 4 sisters. We do get their life story essentially. Right at the beginning of this book, we do find out that one of the sisters has recently passed away, and we are following the other 3 sisters as they are navigating that, and we also do get all of the background on their stories. This I had very high hopes for, and although I did rate this a 3 out of 5 stars, I do feel like this was more so on like a disappointing read, because I had just seen everybody absolutely loving this book, and for me, I just felt like it was just so average. I don't think that there was any real like standout moments in this book, and the epilogue in this book, I just really feel like it could have done without. I really did not like how this book wrapped up. There were also really long chapters in this book, which I feel like made the story drag on more so than it needed to. I did appreciate certain perspectives over others. There were like some storylines that I found a lot more interesting than others. And yeah, again, nothing wrong with this book. I think that a lot of people would enjoy this book. For me, I just feel like it was just a very average read, and I did end up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars as well. Then I read The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a YA mystery. It is following the same characters from the Inheritance games. In this one specifically, we are following our main character Avery, who hosts this annual competition called The Grandest Game, where she gives 7 people a chance to participate, and it basically just gives them like fame and fortune. That is all I will say about this because it is a direct continuation from the previous series. Again, nothing like overly wrong with this book. I feel like I do enjoy the like puzzle aspects and trying to figure out how to solve certain things that are happening in this book. I just really feel like this was just a very average book and there was no real like standout moments for me. I don't know that I'm going to continue on with the series because I didn't really love this one as much as I did the original series. So yeah, it was still enjoyable, but I just don't know if it was enjoyable enough for me to continue, and I did end up giving this one a 3.25 stars out of 5. Then I picked up The Last One at the Wedding by Jason Rekulak. This is the author of Hidden Pictures, which everyone seems to absolutely love, and I personally just did not like it. So I did want to give this author another chance, and this is a mystery and thriller. We are following our main character, Frank, who is estranged from his daughter. He hasn't talked to her for a couple of years, and then one day she does end up calling him and saying like, hey dad, I am getting married and I would like you to attend. So Frank is over the moon. He is so excited that his daughter has reached out, but then he does find out some pretty disturbing things about her fiance. So while he is at this wedding, I believe it's like a 3-day affair, he is basically trying to figure out the mystery behind her fiance and to see if he can kind of like convince his daughter to not marry this man. This was an enjoyable mystery and thriller. I think that if you are looking for something that is like super fast paced, this would be a really good option. I really liked the fact that we did get a lot of background on this family. We do get the story moving in like a linear fashion, and then we do get some background on things as we are moving through the story. So I did really enjoy the writing style of this. I don't think that this is anything groundbreaking. I don't think that if you read a lot of mystery and thrillers, there is anything really stand out about this, but I did have a good time. I do recommend the audiobook. It was very immersive, and I did end up giving this one a 3.5 stars out of 5. Then I read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This is an adult romance. So in this, we are following Clementine, who has basically accomplished everything she wants in her life, but after suffering an accident, she is forced to move back to her hometown. There, she does have a romance with a character named Luke, who is her brother's best friend, and they knew each other from when they were very, very young. He used to kind of like antagonize and tease her, and now they are in a situation where the romance is between both of those characters. I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but I feel like this book is pretty overhyped in my opinion. I think it was a fine romance. I don't think that there was anything wrong with this story, but I don't think that it was anything that was super groundbreaking. But I do feel like this story is just not memorable at all. I feel like I've already kind of forgotten exactly what happens in this book. I think that it was just very average, and I think that it's super hyped in my opinion. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it, and I definitely will continue on with the series as I've heard that the books do get better. But yeah, I did end up giving this one a 3.5 stars out of 5. The next book I read was My December Darling by Lauren Asher. This is a Christmas novella. It is a little bit on the longer side for a novella. I think it's over 200 pages, but it is still like a short book. This is following Catalina and Luke. Catalina is attending her sister's wedding. She is a like traveling nurse, I believe, and she is attending her sister's wedding. Her sister is getting married to her ex-boyfriend, but they didn't really date for too long, so there is no real like bad blood there, and she ends up falling in love with the best man at the wedding, Luke. This was very, very cute. This gave me exactly what I was looking for. I just wanted a really cute Christmas romance, and this absolutely delivered. I loved our two main characters. I thought that they were very mature. Again, when we do get to the conflict in this book, I thought that it was handled very well. That is a big thing with me. I do like when the conflict in romance books are handled well, and I really thought that there was so many like cute moments in this book. Now looking at the cover after having read the book, I can see all of the different references that are made in the book. It was just absolutely perfect and exactly what I needed, and I did end up giving this one a 3.75 stars out of 5. Following that, I did read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This is an adult contemporary romance. We are following our main character, Lou, who ends up going to work for this man named Will Traynor. He suffered a accident that left him in a wheelchair. He is a quadriplegic, and Lou gets hired by his family to help out, but also just to try and get him into like a better mindset and in better spirits. I won't really say too much else about this because I feel like this story is kind of best to go in not really knowing too much and the real like motivations behind what these characters are trying to do. I will start by saying that this book is super sad. Like, I was in tears by the end of it. I thought that this story was just like very heartbreaking, but for some reason I just did not rate this any higher because I hated the characters in this. Like, Lou and Will were not like that bad. I didn't have like too many problems with them, but her family was just not it. I feel like they were probably written to be unlikable, but some of the things that came out of their mouth, it just really took me out of the story, and I just did not really like our characters. I didn't vibe with like her family at all. I didn't really vibe with his family. I did appreciate kind of where the author took this book because I feel like this author could have gone one of two ways. One being the more popular way, and I feel like the way that this ended was the least popular way, and I do like seeing that perspective because I don't feel like a lot of authors would write it in that way. If you guys have read this book, then I think you know what I am talking about. So yeah, very sad. I did have a good time. I just feel like the characters annoyed me to the point where I couldn't rate this any higher, and I did end up giving this a 3.75 stars out of 5. The next book I read was William by Mason Coyle. This is a horror novel. It is also another like pretty short book. I think the audiobook was only 5 hours, and it was a very enjoyable listen. So this is following our main character Henry, who essentially creates an AI robot named William. William then gets like a very unhealthy obsession with Henry's wife Lily, and he ends up trying to destroy this AI robot, and unfortunately that kind of fails and he is not able to destroy this robot. There are things that this robot is still able to do, and he is basically causing all of this horror in their life. This book started off a little bit slow for me and then really picked up in the second half. I was absolutely blown away by the ending of this book. The twist that happens at the end took me completely by surprise, which is kind of annoying because I feel like this was so obvious and I should have seen that coming. If you guys have read this, like, please message me because I would love to talk about the ending of this book. I feel like it was so obvious and I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. So I love that it took me completely by surprise. The only reason I didn't rate this a little bit higher is that I felt like the story at the beginning just didn't 100% captivate me right away. It did take quite a while for me to get into this book. But if you are looking for a short horror and you like that whole idea of like, would AI ever be able to like take over human life, then I think that this book would be absolutely perfect for you. And I did end up giving this one a 3.75 stars out of 5. Then I read The Deep Dark by Molly Knox Ostertag. This was the first time that I have ever read a graphic novel as an audiobook. So I actually thought that Hoopla had this graphic novel available, but when I looked, it actually was the audiobook to the graphic novel. So I had to listen to it, and it was actually like a pretty enjoyable experience, to be honest. I do wish that I did have the actual like graphic novel in front of me so that I could kind of like follow along, because it did get a little bit confusing, like actually just listening to it and not actually being able to see like the actual pictures to go along with it. But that didn't hinder my enjoyment of the book because I did really end up enjoying this one. This I will not tell you what it is about because I feel like if you go into this without knowing a lot, it actually adds a lot to the story. The only thing I will say about this is that we are following a main character that is in high school and she has to take care of her grandmother. And there is also a horror element that takes place in this graphic novel, which really like worked for me. And I thought that it was just absolutely creepy. Again, I wish I could have like actually seen the illustrations for this because I feel like I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But regardless, I would 100% recommend this graphic novel, and I did end up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Jo Lenz. This is a memoir of her life. She's talking about her life and how she was part of this cult, but not really realizing that this was a cult. We do get a little bit of her like life on One Tree Hill and being able to film that show. I do rate my memoirs, but I do not not rate them based on like their story. I just rate them based on my enjoyment and how like engaged I was in the story. So the rating does not go towards like these people's lives. It's more so just like my experience reading the book. This book I did end up giving a 4 out of 5 stars. I personally just wanted more One Tree Hill. That is a me issue. I am absolutely obsessed with One Tree Hill, so I was expecting a lot more of her talking about like One Tree Hill, which I didn't really get too much of. This started off really strong and engaging, and I was like very much like here for it, but then it kind of lost me and got a little bit like repetitive in my opinion. I still really had a good time with it, and I did end up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Looking for Jane by Heather Marshall. This is a historical fiction. This was actually recommended to me by one of my best friends in the entire world. We have very similar reading tastes, so whenever I really enjoy something, I always recommend it to her and vice versa. She was actually really mad that this was not a 5-star read for me, but I still think that my rating was really good, and I did have a very good time with this book. Again, this is a historical fiction. We are following the story of 3 different women in this book. Essentially what happens is that in the present day of this novel, this woman finds a letter, and she basically sets out to find out who the intended recipient for this letter is. In order to do that, we do go back to the 1970s, I believe. We are following the story of different women who ran this illegal abortion network where they were performing abortions, but it was not legal at the time, and the only way that people were able to do this was to use this code word named Jane. This book I also believe was inspired by true events, and it does take place in Canada, and actually in the city that is very close by to where I am from. So it is always more so enjoyable to read books where you can actually like relate to the places that are being talked about in the book. This book was such an emotional read. It was so hard-hitting to read. If this is subject matter that is interesting to you, I would 100% recommend this book. It was very well done. The only reason that I believe for me personally that it wasn't a 5-star is that I feel like there is a like twist that happens in this book that is pretty obvious from the beginning, and you can kind of figure out that this is what was going to happen. But also on top of that, I feel like you only get one perspective in this book, and I feel like I personally would have just enjoyed it a little bit more had we have gotten like different perspectives. But yeah, still very enjoyable, very heartbreaking. I would 100% recommend this book, and I did end up giving this one a 4.25 stars out of 5. The next book I have is The Promised Neverland. This is a manga. This is volume number 1. This essentially we are following 3 main characters. Again, another book where I feel like if you go in blind, it's kind of like the best way to go in, because this story really took me by surprise. Like I was shocked by what I was reading. I was so captivated by this book. I absolutely recommend this book. I am so excited to continue on with further volumes in this book. Essentially, we are following 3 main characters. They all live in this orphanage, and they have always thought that this orphanage was just like absolutely perfect. They are like clean, they get food, everything seems to be working out really well. But then 2 of our main characters do discover some pretty dark truths about this orphanage. So it is them trying to navigate how they are going to continue living there and what they are going to do with all of these other children that are also at this orphanage. Again, I absolutely loved this book, and I cannot wait to continue on with this series. The only negative thing I will say about this book and why it was not like a full 5 stars for me is that I just felt like I was watching a soap opera while I was reading this. And what I mean by that is if you have ever watched a soap opera, you know that the story just like constantly repeats itself, and like during an entire like week, you only move the story along by like one plot point. And I just felt like that is what was happening in here. Like each chapter, I feel like our characters were having the same conversations and doing the same kind of things, and the story was actually not moving very quickly at all. I just felt like I was in a week-long soap opera, and I finally got to the end, and that is when the plot actually started moving. Other than that, I absolutely loved this, and I did end up giving this a 4.25 stars out of 5. And finally, the best book that I read in the month of December, that is going to be Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This book was everything I wanted it to be and more. The hype on this book is absolutely real. It is 100% deserved. Everybody needs to go out and read this book. This was just such a beautiful story. So this is following the story of Yasmin and Josiah. They are currently separated during the story of this book, and they do have 2 young kids and also do run a business together. They have found found a new rhythm with their like co-parenting relationship, and we are basically following their love story and how they got together, but also why they are now separated and no longer together, and how they are navigating like a co-parenting relationship and also like dating other people. This story really deals with the idea of, is love enough to kind of conquer anything? Right from the beginning of this book, Kennedy Ryan has this way of just absolutely pulling you into a story. I was so captivated right from the beginning. I really wanted to know 100% what was going on, because you are reading from both of these characters' perspectives and you see how much they absolutely love each other, and in your brain you cannot understand like why they aren't currently together. This story made you feel like you were actually in this story, experiencing all of these characters' emotions, and you literally felt like you were a part of this story. I think that this was my first Kennedy Ryan that I have ever read, but her writing style was just absolutely everything that I needed. It was absolute perfection. This book was so, so good. There is something that happens in this book where I feel like it could have gone the very like stereotypical way that authors usually do end books, but I feel like Kennedy Ryan took it in a different direction, which I really, really appreciated. I thought that it made this story so, so much better. Best book that I read in December. I absolutely loved it. The hype is 100% real on this one, and I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars out of 5. That is going to be it for this video. I had such an incredible reading year. I have read more than I ever did in my entire life this year. I don't think I will ever be able to top this reading year, but let me know down below how you guys did with your reading years. Did you guys meet all of your goals that you wanted to? Let me know down below in the comments, as I would love to know. That is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did make it to the end of this video, please let me know by leaving behind a flower emoji, as there are some flowers on the cover of Before I Let Go, which was my best read of the month. If you did like today's video, I would also love it if you hit that thumbs up like button. And as always, if you are new here, I would love to have you stick around. So please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys all in my next one. Bye.